For you.
Oh, yeah, cool. Thanks, man. Cool. Cheers. All right, cool. I actually enjoyed that little touch. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I actually enjoyed that little touch. Yeah, so very few men will I let touch my bum, and Mark's one of them. So food, movement, stress, family, community. That's just a few of them. There's a little bit more, but I want to focus on a few of these tonight. So food, let's just quickly rush through that. Food actually does relate to mental health, very much so. Do you agree? Okay. How so? Like, has anyone got any ideas behind it?
Feeding the right fuel feeds the brain. So
Yeah. Yeah, right, exactly. The right micronutrients, being the vitamins and minerals, the right sources of macronutrients, being your proteins, fats, carbohydrates. So the main difference that they saw between diets was that these guys all had heavy plant-based diet. It's not to say they didn't eat meat. Some of them did. Some of them are very cautious of meat and are essentially vegetarian or even vegan. But some of them did. So in Nicoya, Costa Rica, for example. But they were free-range animals. They're garden animals. They're garden chickens that used to roam free-range. Or in the case of Icaria, they used to eat a lot of goat cheese, or they eat goat cheese with their meal, so it's very free range, and of course a lot of plant-based. Compare that with a picture of what you see when you walk into a supermarket, a typical supermarket, where we have very colourful diets, but they're very colourful because of the packaging. So we have a very high processed food diet compared with these guys who are very low processed food, very high plant-based, low to moderate meats and proteins and animal products, high fiber, that sort of thing. Another part of their diet was that they had high antioxidants. So it was a very high antioxidant diet. So a lot of these places would drink wine, but it was very, very strong, dark, high antioxidant wine called Cannonau, for example. Which is much different to the wine that's drunk over here, where you'd probably have to drink 20 glasses to get the antioxidants that you get in one over there. So we end up getting drunk before we get our antioxidant fix from our wine, I think. But that's an idea, high antioxidant meals. High omega-3. So their plant-based diet and some of them their fish-based diet have provided them with a lot of omega-3s. So food, healthy, very low processed foods. Movement. I say movement rather than exercise. We have our gyms as our outlets, and that's what we've chosen as our outlets, as opportunities to move. A lot of them don't have gyms, but they move, and they move frequently. And for example, the Okinawans, their tables are very low, so just to get down to their tables, they have to squat. So there's natural squatting just to get up and down from their tables every day, every meal. They garden, they fish, they walk up the hills, they walk to their cafes to have their daily coffee. So they move. Low stress, they have figured out ways to lower their stress levels naturally, whether that's gardening, whether that's fishing, whether that's just being communal and enjoying company, whether that's not stressing out about getting older. One of the things that we tend to do is stress out about aging and getting older. I've had to let that go. As I've gotten older, I realize I'm not stopping. It's not like I can slow it down at all. I'm feeling a little bit old tonight because I've had very little sleep over the last couple of days as I've met some work deadlines. But I'm feeling good. I'm vital at 44, and feel good, still strong. Feel as strong as I did when I was 21, except for maybe a couple of injuries. So it's not stressing about the things that are ahead of us. It's letting go of the things that are in the past, and it's dealing with the things that are in the present that we can deal with, and letting go of it in a timely manner. So one of the things that I asked my wife to do, and maybe some of you can relate to this, is not to bring the stresses to bed. That's one of our worst habits in Western society, is that we take stresses to bed and we're talking about the problems as we fall asleep. And so all we're doing is creating this stressed mind as we fall into a sleep. So we're not falling into a peaceful slumber. Instead, we've got an agitated mind, and it doesn't help us to rest properly. So the tip that I give is, if you can't deal with a problem an hour before bed or even more, let it go until tomorrow. You know? De-stress with a book. De-stress with and not a high-stress book, obviously, not something to... but de-stress with a book. I've got to help me de-stress, I've got a little book by my bedside, and I write some poetry. Maybe one day I'll release a book of my poetry, who knows. Some of them are pretty weird, and you know, as you're falling asleep, you can write some pretty whacked out sort of stuff. But I think it's pretty cool. So whatever you can to sort of de-stress, it might be some chamomile tea before bed. Might be some magnesium, all these sort of little tricks. But definitely do not take stress to bed. Family, so they have very family-minded communities, and that's, some of us don't necessarily have traditional family units to rely on, as many of these communities still do, but we can find family, and we can enjoy the company of others, and we can attract people that become our family. In other words, what Dan Buettner was saying was the real I guess, strength of this factor was the fact that they all had someone that they could love dearly, and that they would do anything for, that they would live for, that they would not just die for, but that they would live for. Lastly, community. That's the one I want to dwell on a little bit tonight, because I think it's pertinent to this environment. Now, I told you Mike was one of my first students. And I have absolutely loved watching how he has decided to start a business by creating community, almost in conjunction with each other, almost, you know, parallel to each other. It wasn't one ahead of the other. It was, this is my passion, this is what I love, and I'm going to build it with community in mind. And it has allowed for something like on a Saturday night for a whole bunch of people to be sitting here preparing for even some of you, I don't know if all of you are, but some people coming in throughout the night. That's crazy, that's unheard of. Not a lot of gyms can claim that sort of community power. Community and communication come from the same root word, communis, which means common. And when we consider that, we can understand that communication can strengthen community in and of itself. They're the same root word. It's about finding commonalities, right? And so what would you say are the commonalities in this room? Because I'm sure we have a lot of differences, right? Every single person in here can probably cite 10 differences between them and the person beside them. If they really thought about it. And we can do that across the world. I can cite differences between that person walking down the road and this person over. What are the commonalities? Because that's what we actually draw upon, and that's what brings people together, and that's what creates community. So what would you say, just pop out an answer, what would you say is a commonality between you and anyone else, no matter, even if, anyone else in this place, in this gym? The gym itself, the gym environment. Okay, but there's lots of elements in this gym, right? So what is it?
Health.
What's that? Health and fitness. Yeah, okay. So purpose. Purpose is a sixth commonality that Dan Buettner found between all of these blue zones. He realized that when they woke up in the morning, they knew why they were waking up. They had a reason for waking up. And as you can see, it all sort of feeds into each other. Having a purpose helps you to step out and actually enjoy stepping out of your door into the neighborhood that you are walking into. It's the worst feeling to feel like when you step out of your door, you're stepping away from, I won't say it's the worst feeling, but when we step out of our door, if we feel like we're stepping away from home, just by taking one footstep outside of the door, and if we feel like the further we get away from that doorstep, the further we get away from home, That's not so great. These people, when they step outside of the door, they're still home. You're still at home. They realize that everyone else around them have all got similar purposes, and they are all working together for common causes. This weekend, you were all working together for common causes, right? And that common cause being mental health. That's a fantastic cause, and that brings people together. Maybe it's not mental health. Maybe it's mental health today. Maybe it's physical health another day. But whatever it is, commonalities are what draw communities together. So, one way to build communities is to engage in communication. One way we can do that is just to start opening up to each other and talking to each other, not trying to hide ourselves from each other. Mike told me that everyone here feels like this is a safe space. They're allowed to be real and authentic. You're allowed to walk in here and, I don't know, feel like, today I just feel like slobby and fat or tired or I'm lethargic. I don't have to put on a front when I walk in here. I can actually be authentic, but there are people here to help build me up. There are not people here that are going to fake me out and tell me no. Instead of them just washing over my concerns, they're actually going to help build me up and help me to feel better about myself simply by giving me purpose and guiding my purpose. So one thing I want to do tonight is actually have a little bit of an interview. So I brought someone to have an interview with. You don't have a microphone though, so you're going to have to talk up, but you've got a big mouth, so you'll be all right. I can take this off and share a microphone like that if you want. So this is Marion, and she has been through a few struggles recently. And the reason I thought Marion would be good to interview is because I think what she's been through recently directly correlates with the purpose of this weekend. So are you ready for being a little bit raw and real? Bring your chair.
No, that's my chair.
What? So I'm coming over here to get this chair that you were just sitting next to. Bloody hell. Supposed to sit on my right hand. That's how the interviews work. But okay. So this is Marion.
Hello, I'm Marion.
Now Marion used to, and she's just started it back up again, but she used to have her own gym. And it was a great gym, and it was also strong on community and community values. It was based around her family. So she started with her family and then built out from the network out from there. That's how I see it anyway. You agree? Yeah. So, and then it all fell apart. Can I be blunt and talk like that tonight? It all fell apart for her. Eventually, she found herself in hospital, right? Yeah. In the mental health ward. And how long you need? I'm going to come closer and maybe share the microphone with you so everyone can hear you. Cool?
Okay.
All right. So how did that come about? How did it come to a point where you had this really cool gym, kind of similar in feel to this one actually, not as big, but it had a similar sort of vibe, an industrial
very similar.
Cool, yeah. This reminds me a lot of it. It was just a little bit smaller.
Just different colours, really.
Different colours. The bright greens and stuff. So, we'll share this mic.
Okay.
So you started your gym, and that's where I want to start. Okay, yep. Because I want to start at your breakdown. Would we call it a breakdown?
Yep.
Okay. So how did it go from you being on top of the world to being completely demolished mentally? Yeah.
Okay.
Hold that. You hold it and speak into it.
All right. I don't usually need
Speak into it. You need to speak into it.
All right. Where do I start with this?
Over to it. Pass the whole box. That one's for you. That's just filming.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Let's just hold that and then pass it back to him.
All good. All right. In 2016, I opened a beautiful space, which is very similar to the space here. And it was built all in regards to community and family. And as Mike would know, the struggles it takes to get something like this off the ground. In Mindsight, I also have 7 children, so I still have, full-time mum trying to get everything up and out. I had a couple of hundred clients ready to go. So when I opened up my gym for Tejas, I was 100% go. I worked 16-hour days, 6 days a week. On the Sunday, I kept on working to keep my business, my dream, alive. In our field, obviously, as Nate would have said, the life of a personal trainer is very small. Been in the industry probably nearly the same amount of time as Nate. So working from that time all the way to current, I become a very perfectionist in my field. I wanted everything done perfect. I wanted to give my clients 150% of everything I could. So I did, and I pushed and I pushed and I pushed, and I did not take care of myself. And that's where everything fell apart. I forgot to eat. I didn't make time to eat. I didn't make time to train. And then little things day by day started to happen out of the norm. I started to get really exhausted. And for someone with ADHD, it's new. And it was like, what's this feeling? I don't understand what this feeling is. I'll be right. I keep going and going and going and going. And then my patterns of sleep started to get smaller and smaller and smaller until the point I was functioning on about 3 hours of sleep. And I just thought, okay, I feel alright, you know. And then one day I literally woke up and I couldn't function. My body literally could not move. And I just thought, what the hell? I couldn't move, I couldn't function. I had basically put my whole physicality in burnout. Everything was depleted internally, physically, and with that, then boom, mentally, everything just went backward.
Cool.
Want me to carry on?
No, I'll ask you some questions to flesh it out.
Yep.
So when if you didn't realize that she was struggling with a mental health disorder, you would have gone like, wow, this is the peppiest, most upbeat, positive person in the world. I know personally, as a friend, as I was watching it, there were some concerns because I thought, like, how long can she keep this up? It seems like every time I see her, she's on a high. And so, not knowing that she actually had this disorder, I was just thinking, my concern was saying, she's not letting herself be negative. And that's actually something that I believe we are allowed to embrace, is negativity. When you feel negative, you've got to embrace it in order to wrestle with it. And if you don't embrace it, you're letting it beat you to a pulp. But if you want to actually, and you may not even know it, you're letting yourself be a punching bag without realizing it. But if you wrap your arms around the negativity and you start to wrestle with it, you can take it down, you can deal with it, and you can move on. So that as I saw it, she wasn't dealing with negativity, and instead pretending that everything was great and grand. And perhaps that was part of it, coupled with the mental health disorder. And so one day we turn around and we're like, oh, what's happened to Marion's gym? It's just no longer, the doors are shut, it's no longer in existence. So it was essentially overnight. It wasn't,
I was in hospital.
Yeah. So it was essentially boom, gone. So it went from being a working gym to no longer being in existence pretty much overnight. And that's what can happen when we don't take care of ourselves and when we don't allow ourselves to answer the hard questions. We don't face negatives that are being thrown at us. We don't
take help.
And we don't take help as well. We pretend that everything is okay. So let's fast forward a little bit. Mm-hmm. You did get back on your feet.
Yep.
Okay. And we could talk all night, but we do not have that much time. But you did get back on your feet. You had some ups and downs, though. You had a bit of a roller coaster, right? And so most recently, she got back on her feet again, started her business again. But then what happened?
Okay. I always end up at crazy places, just random. I was actually at our local shops and a young man was there and he screamed and I could hear his scream probably from about 20 feet away, right? And all I knew, I had an instinct was like, what the hell? I turned around, went to this guy, ran up to him, he collapsed in my arms, and he was literally wanting to commit suicide right there and then. So I held him. He had 2 dogs, I think they are bull mastiff dogs, and they were pulling him and dragging him, and he was screaming and crying, and it took me about 3 hours to try to get inside this guy's head to convince him not to take his life. He was trying to continuously reach into his bag for something. I didn't know what it was, but I was asking people to help. They slowly came along, which took a long bloody time for help. But within that moment of trying to help him, what was happening to me, my bipolar started to go into mania, which means my cortisol levels go through the roof, and I start to get really unbalanced, basically. That's the easiest way for me to describe this situation. So whilst I was trying to help this guy, all this stuff was happening with me. The ambulance came along for this guy, but within a couple of seconds later, another ambulance there was for me. So I ended up back in the hospital, straight onto bloods. They test my bloods to see how my levels are, and when they're way too high, the only thing they can do is hospitalise me, and that's pretty much how my disorder works. So I'm right now currently on about 1,500 milligrams, which is incredibly high, of a drug called lithium, which actually keeps me, well, apparently they say it's normal, so I don't really understand normal, but I'm basically 50% of what I'm usually not, if that makes sense. Yeah. It really depends on the situation I'm in, and on the scenarios and the events that I do within the weeks, etc. And that's why my husband always says, where are you, what are you going, and what are you going to do? You know, please don't allow the police to come along. I tend to get myself into a bit of trouble here and there. So yeah, that's just me.
Okay, so, but you are now, but what are you doing with your business? Like, how have you overcome that problem?
Okay, Okay, so with my business, obviously, being a trainer, instead of having 60 clients a week, which was my base, I've pretty much cut that down to about 5. So I've taken away all the responsibility of the business, and I do 5 classes a week, and that's pretty much it. I don't actually allow any more until I get more trainers. But in regards to myself, I keep my business very minuscule, and I've actually put in more healthcare planning for myself at the moment.
Good. So, so what I wanted to highlight here in this conversation was the idea that sometimes even we all struggle. We all have. Sometimes it's diagnosed, and sometimes it's undiagnosed. Sometimes it can't be diagnosed. Sometimes it's just life beating down on us, and there's nothing chemically imbalanced, but it's just that we there are lots of worries bearing down on us. I know for myself recently, going through some business troubles and dealing with certain government regulators that have been kind of beating me to a pulp in a way, that I've been fighting for a couple of years. There's been some very, very dark moments in my mind, in my mental state, and one thing that I have done to maintain my own mental strength is to realize that I don't have to do it alone. So I remember, you talk to your family, you talk to your friends. I remember coming out here one day. Well, it was my lowest day in regards to this fight that I've been having with my business, and I decided I was going to come out here and see the progress that Mike was making. And I wanted to do that, and I don't know if he knows that I had actually tears in my eyes because I tried to hide it really well, but it was a moment of extreme pride in someone that I love dearly, and that I'm very proud of, being able to see how far he's come, and feel like I had there's a little piece of me in that, and that helped just lift my spirits immensely. And so to wrap it up and to conclude, I just want to encourage you to do that. We started off talking about the longest living, healthiest living people in the world and their common factors. The factor that I really want to sort of point out for you to take home and to consider as it's pertinent to this weekend is to understand the value of what you have here in your community, and realize that when you are in your darkest moments, or even if you feel like you're slipping into dark moments, I promise you, Michael is here, as are, I imagine, many others to turn to, even if it's not to have a chat, even if it's just to be in the presence of someone that can lift your spirits. Do it. Don't feel like you have to fight, the dark clouds, the black dog, whatever you want to call it, on your own. You're not alone. Marion wasn't alone. She had her wonderful husband, James, who's an incredible man, to be there and support. I've had my wife, I've had friends and family all around me, and you guys also have each other. So I want to encourage you to understand that and to always reach out to those, and also to be there for those that are also looking for support. Thank you for having me today for the group exercise class and for this little chat. You can find me online. Feel free to connect. I'm always up for that. And thanks for having me, Mike and Genfit. Well done.
Thanks, sir.
You got it.
And just touching on that, Nate, I was one of Nate. I think I was his second to third student. And when we talk about this and mental health and us all connecting on something, I met Marion around that same time, probably a year after I did my course in my first boot camp, when she never told me she was a trainer. And these guys I met when I actually went through my divorce, and I went through my weight loss journey, and I was in my darkest spot. And these are the people that, especially Nate, going through those courses, that are the ones that helped me out. And listening to Marion's story then, it's funny because I know I sat back and I listened about the 18-hour days and the stresses and the things around it and the 4 hours sleeps, and I know everybody in this room sits there at some stage and has questioned me on that and said the same things that I've heard said in there. And I'm lucky where I don't think people realise I talk a lot, because I've got people in here that actually let me get things off my chest. So when I do have to stress and I am training, which I put back in, these are the reasons why, and these are the reasons why I talk to you guys so much, because then I know I'm beating those issues before they even come up, or when I can feel them come up. So thank you guys for talking and putting that out, and thank you guys for listening and being there for me as much as we're there for each other as well. So thank you.
All right, guys.